What's good, dear Dovies? Thanks for tuning in to another Deep Dove, this time on my entry of the Diary of Volunteers on Earth. I had my grandparents over, and let me first address that I'm aware of how wrong the title of this podcast episode may sound, or maybe not. Probably I'm overthinking it. I don't know. I felt it sounded wrong. But I wanted to stay consistent with the titles, at least for a little while, so I was like, ugh. At worst, people will think this guy is weird and the title of this podcast episode is weird, and then just not listen to it. And at best, people will be like, what the fuck? And listen to it exactly because of that. So it could go either way. I'm not sure. We'll see. Before I get into this week's recap, I just wanted to ask, if you are hearing this, I'd be super curious to know if you have also listened to the whole German episode and just really love my content for some reason, or if you just want a concise version of the full episode, or if you, which is probably the most likely case, just simply don't speak German. Regardless, I would love for you to get in touch with me and tell me. I always appreciate connecting with my audience and community, so feel free to reach out here. Well, you can't reach out on Spotify, but get in touch with me on Instagram, or you can shoot me an email at dove_podcast@gmail.com, wherever. One more thing. Some of you might have already seen it on my social media, but I just wanted to point it out to you guys as well. I was nominated for the podcast awards of Austria's most listened to radio broadcasting network, which is called Ö3. And I've been trying to rally the Dove flock on my social media, but you don't actually have to be Austrian to vote for me. So please check out the show notes for the link. If you're listening to this live, if it's already past February 2023, just ignore whatever I just said. But if you're listening to it live, you can vote every single day until February 5th. So I would be super duper grateful for anyone taking the time to cast their vote. I don't know if it's actually gonna help me. I certainly can't win any money, but maybe it will be good for, reach and clout or whatever. So thank you. And now on to this week's Dove entry. As I have already mentioned, I visited my grandparents over the holidays. Well, I actually saw a lot of my family quite a bit over the holidays, more than ever, I think. But yeah, they are the two grandparents that I have left. They are on my mom's side. The Illich grandparents on my dad's side have already passed away. And after recording and editing the podcast episode, I actually kind of got a little sad for a little while, because I realized that I would have loved to record a podcast with my other grandparents as well. I bet they would also have super interesting stories to tell because of what they have lived through. I mean, my grandpa on my dad's side was in the Second World War and escaped Russia, I believe. So, yeah, I'm not only saying this because they are my grandparents, but talking to Sonny and Horst, my grandparents who are still alive, was so rewarding. And I personally can only encourage anyone out there who's hearing this to get in touch with your grandparents if they're still alive after listening to this. And, spend some time with them. Listen to them. Even if it's just on the phone, talk to them. I'm sure they would appreciate it a lot. And I also shamefully have to admit that it wasn't even my original idea to have Sonny and Horst, my grandparents, on the Diary of Volunteers on Earth. It was actually my mom who pointed out to me that my grandparents also have volunteered a lot of their time during their lives, especially since they retired a few years ago. So thanks, Mom. You're probably not listening to this, but it was truly a great idea. And yeah, so I always knew that Sonny and Horst have volunteered with the Austrian Protestant Church, or Evangelic Church, as we would say in German. But I wasn't really aware that my grandma actually was that, I think you call it trustee. Feel free to correct me on this, English natives out there. The trustee for their congregation, their Protestant congregation or parish, I guess, I don't know, here in their hometown for over 10 years. And my grandpa, for example, manages their homepage and, believe it or not, their social media. So yeah, you have heard that correctly. He manages their social media account. I mean, I dare you to shoot me a direct message if you know anyone whose grandparents manage a social media account for the congregation of a church. I think that's pretty unique. And to me, that is really amazing. And I'm not trying to, flatter them or anything. I just think it speaks to their mindset, and that already also showed in the podcast. And it's probably one of the things that I admire about Sonny and Horst most. And it's also something, that I think a lot of us can, kind of integrate or try to integrate that kind of mindset. Because when I asked them about their learnings and the advice that they would give to their younger selves, for example, Horst, my grandpa, said two things. One, on one hand, it is extremely important, he thinks, to stay tolerant. But on the other hand, tolerant, and he also said open-minded. But on the other hand, it has always been very important to him to also kind of, preserve and conserve his own identity throughout his life. That's what he said. And I think what he meant is his cultural and social identity that, he and we have built over hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And such identity obviously is totally different depending on where you are born and where you are brought up. And for him, that also shows by him being involved in the so-called Monument Conservation Club of our home state, Styria, in Austria. So they basically try to do exactly what he appreciates, which is to, protect certain buildings, certain traditions, and help them to live on so that they don't die out. I think that's a cool thing. And I think it shows in a lot of ways how this side of the family, the Bergmann family, operates and also has developed over the last few generations. Because, if you're in this family, but if you're not, customs and traditions are quite important in this family, especially around Christian holidays such as Christmas just now or Easter. And I remember one story maybe underlines this a little bit. Back in 2014, it was the first time that my mom, it was the first time ever that she spent Christmas Eve away from her extended family. Because usually we would all gather at my grandparents', so my mom and her three siblings and their families. We did this year, for example. But when I was in the US in 2014, my parents and my brothers came to visit me, and we spent Christmas in New York. And I remember, I think it was, I don't know if this is a correct memory, but it was quite emotional. And I remember that we talked to everyone via Skype or video call or something from our hotel lobby so that we would still, be able to connect with them during Christmas Eve, and especially on the next day, I think it was. that's just one story. Anyways, I found what Horst said to be very intriguing, especially because it is, in my mind, kind of a contradiction almost, or at least, very opposing motivations and forces, if you like. Like, I 100% agree with him that keeping an open mind and trying to stay tolerant are two very, very important ingredients to a functional society, or maybe even on an individual level. I mean, who are we kidding? Opening my mind is probably what I've spent most of my life on, or my lifetime on, in the last 10 years at least. Maybe besides sleeping and eating, but both of those can also be mind-opening in a sense, I guess. So being open-minded allows us to tolerate and empathize with different perspectives, different cultures, different beliefs. And more importantly, it also allows us to collaborate in a meaningful way and in a constructive way, where we are able to create more win-win situations for everyone. It's like, I don't know, it's like Oprah, who, you get a win and you get a win. Everyone gets a win from an open mind, I believe. And from open hearts as well. This is not just a mind thing. It's almost more a heart thing, where we have to open up our feelings and our hearts to the world out there. And I'm aware that I'm probably preaching to the choir on this whole matter, but I'm just so passionate about this that I just can't help myself then speaking on it. And one thing that I found to be a very effective, maybe even the most effective way to open your mind is explore. I have already mentioned this in my last Tuesday transformation video, which I do on my Instagram. If you haven't checked that out and are interested, just go follow Frittenbrudi on Insta. That's FRITTENBRUDI, or you can just click the link in the show notes. I post videos every week there on the topic of transformation. And yeah, for me, the most effective way is explore. And this exploration can manifest in many different ways. For me personally, it is traveling. It has been since I was 15, when I first went on an international trip, basically by myself, or at least without my family, with friends, with scouting. And the most eye and mind and heart-opening things that have happened to me, I probably experienced when I was abroad. Far, far out of my comfort zone. Like, I don't know, sleeping in a hammock in the La Guajira desert in northern Colombia comes to mind, where even the trip there was anything but comfortable. And that's where the Wayu people live, under the harshest conditions. And they still manage to be hospitable and welcoming, even though they barely have anything themselves. Same thing in, central China, where we were invited by a local family into their yurt, only because I wanted to take a picture of their yak. I shit you not, this actually happened. I wanted to take a picture of this yak because it was the first time I've ever seen a yak, like in real life, or at least in the quote-unquote wild. And this family, they just invited us into their yurt, into their tent, where they live on the tiniest space. I think it was 7 of them, maybe. And they shared their yak milk tea and some delicious chewy yak entrails. And I don't know, yeah, it's those kind of experiences that to me are very mind and eye and heart opening. Like I said, I could go on. And as I'm saying this, I am actually realizing that I can't wait to get the fuck out there again and to experience all that beauty that our world has to offer. I'm super stoked. It's happening soon. More on that later. But yeah, from my perspective, my grandparents are great examples of how you can sustain and keep that mindset even when you grow older and when you see, I can only imagine this, but even in the last 15 years where I'm kind of aware of what's happening around me, so many things have rapidly changed. And when the older you get, I believe I can imagine that seeing so many things change can be kind of hard. But you can adapt to it and you can find a sweet spot. I guess that's what it is. Finding that sweet spot and that balance between those two concepts of, conservation and innovation. I don't know if those are the best words for it, but I hope you get the point. And I guess finding that balance is one of the harder challenges that we face in our lifetime, I think. Let me know if you think differently. But yeah, this is what we were talking about. And in regards of their tasks and roles within their volunteering for the Protestant congregation, I also brought up the topic of religious faith and whether or not that was a motivating factor for the both of them. And interestingly, maybe they were a little bit hesitant to say it. I don't know. I don't want to put words in their mouths, but they both said religious faith, wasn't really a factor that much. I guess my grandma phrased it differently, but for her, it was the whole, what I already talked about, the whole conservation part. She said that somebody needed to help the congregation because otherwise she felt that it might just diminish and be gone. And she didn't want that to happen. So she felt the call to action and she just wanted to, help out. And one thing where I think this does tie into religious faith a little bit is what she said about Mass. Like, she said that every Sunday when they go to Mass, it has a very calming effect on her. And it enables her to not think about everyday problems. This is how she worded it. And to me, personally, this sounds like what, for example, meditation does for me. That's why I meditate every day. Or what, other sort of flowy kind of activities do for other people, like sports or arts or, I don't know what. But that calming effect and that opportunity to think about something else than the daily rat race. And I feel like that in what she said, there also is a hidden reason as to why certain religious communities decline. I hope this will make sense as I'm speaking it out. But at least in Austria, it seems, well, no, actually, it seems like a global phenomenon probably, but people at some point lost faith and lost trust into religious faiths. And they have come up with their own substitutions for those quote-unquote traditional faiths and beliefs. For some, I guess it could be their favorite sports team. I'm almost at that level. But some people follow their sports team literally religiously. And if they don't watch the game on Sunday or whenever, it's just not imaginable. For others, it might be, I don't know, it could be any hobby. It could be their old car or their old timer that they, clean every Saturday. Or even the way they go about their diet, I guess, for a lot of people, that has become a substitute religion. It just has to be important and valuable enough on your individual value scale or I don't know, ethic compass. And oftentimes you find people trying to evangelize others about what is important to them. And that's when it becomes problematic, in my opinion. Same with traditional religions. As soon as you are trying to impose your belief on somebody else, that's when shit hits the fan, I think. And certainly I'm sometimes guilty of that myself, because we all are kind of attached to our own beliefs and our own biases. And we have to consciously work on not being too attached to them so we can keep an open mind. So, like, what I yeah, that's actually funny because it's ironic because that's what I just did a couple of minutes ago with being open-minded. I guess that you could say that is my substitute religion, and yeah, I found that to be very interesting, and I think about that a lot actually. And there's a lot of different opinions on this out there, and I'd be super curious what you guys think. So, my grandpa added another aspect that seems to be a very common theme among volunteers when I asked him why or what his motivation and what his drive was. And that theme is self-efficacy. I hope this is how you pronounce it. I had to look up the English translation, I'm going to be honest. But I believe it just might be a human way to be wanting to be part of a community or a group and be able to contribute your skills, your knowledge, your wisdom. And that could be any given community. It doesn't matter. It just makes us feel better about ourselves. Because from that group and that community, we can ideally be rewarded with, gratitude, appreciation, recognition, something that maybe some people find in their regular daily jobs. And that's awesome. If you find that on a daily basis and you are content with that, that's great. But for a lot of people, unfortunately, I guess, our system doesn't allow them to feel that sort of appreciation through their daily jobs. So they find it in other communities and in volunteering, for example. And it just makes you feel better, I guess. So I don't know. There's maybe this romanticized and idealistic kind of way of seeing volunteering as like altruism and just doing good out of love for humanity. But probably more often it is the case that we do it because it makes ourselves feel better. So yeah, but it's awesome because at the same time we can give back and we can do something good with our skills and with our time and with our resources that we have. So I guess it's exactly one of those win-win situations that I was also talking about earlier. Wow, that's a great thought, actually. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the best argument for volunteering. You create win-win situations. We need more of that. That's it. That's the tea. I could wrap this up now, this deep dive, but before I do so, I want to share one more thing that I noted. What my grandparents answered to my new quote unquote last question ritual for the podcast. And that is the question, who would you send a letter via carrier pigeon to? And what would the content be? It could be a person in the past, in the present, or in the future. So I guess it's not a very realistic question, but the answers were really interesting. And I thought both answers by my grandparents were really smart. So Horst said he would send a letter to Putin if, and I quote, it would get even through to him, because we don't know, unquote, to withdraw the Russian troops from Ukraine, obviously, and, to pay reparations to the Ukrainian people and so on. And my grandma, she would send a letter to some kind of international parliament, like G20-ish kind of gathering where the most important leaders and presidents and prime ministers and whatnot gather, to demand them to, and I am quoting her on this, be more strict in enforcing environmental protection and climate laws. Yes, Grandma. Yes. She did say that, and she said that she doesn't know how to exactly go about this and what to exactly, implement and change. But she said that everyone has to make 1,000 small steps to get somewhere. And, I'm getting goosebumps while I'm saying this because it's so awesome. And I don't know if I've mentioned it enough in this podcast, but I'm super proud to have grandparents like Sonny and Horst. It's awesome. She made vegan Christmas cookies for some vegan members of our family. And that's one of those small steps, It's not a great thing, but it's something that everyone can do. And I love them for that. For me, this was a really special Dove entry. I'm getting to an end. I probably didn't cover everything that we talked about, but this is an overview. This is a deep Dove. You can, if you speak German, go check it out. I hope you enjoyed this deep Dove. Make sure that you cast your vote every day from today, and make sure that you tune in again next time. Much peace, much love. Until then, Jakob.